Self-esteem and self-worth. Should we know the difference? And what actually blinds us from self-actualization? This is The Conversation, and welcome to episode 4 of the very exciting series that we've been having, which is Know Thyself. And before we delve into these questions that we just asked, we'll review what we have done in episode 3 and look at the human psyche according to Freud and draw parallels with Jung. Brendan, welcome to The Conversation.
Thank you very much.
I am so excited about it. I cannot wait to hear what we're going to talk about.
I'm excited to find out what will come out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, before we continue, episode 3.
Yeah.
Freud came up quite a bit regarding the human psyche.
Yes.
Could you give us a review, a roundup?
Okay. We did emphasize a lot on Freud the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
And what we were trying to discover is why is it that we have so many voices in our head and those voices seem to contradict. And we try to answer that using Freud's analysis of the psyche, which Freud suggested that there is the unconscious. And we did say that he was the first to popularize the idea actually of the unconscious, although he was not the only one at that time. So these are the unconscious, the preconscious, and the conscious.
Mm-hmm.
In his term, actually, he used the term the id, which he referred to as the animalistic side of man, pleasure-driven, which we said in the last episode that it was a place of tempestuous conflict of thought, that is the unconscious. And he also described the ego as interposing between the superego and the id. So you have the id, you have the ego, and you have the superego. So the ego interposes between the id and the superego. At the same time, the ego tries to deal with external realities, and that's what gives you the perception of self, which is why there is an idea that the ego is the self. I think if you have not really studied psychology, you hear people talk about the ego, finding the ultimate ego from within. I think the ego is mostly associated with self because according to Freudian psychology, the ego deals with external reality, but at the same time interposes between the id and the superego. And we said that the superego was the conscience. We refer to it as the critical judge that resides in one's head. This is the one that, if well trained, will provide guidance as to how one should live and how one should orientate their life. However, this superego is capable, very much so, to become a tyrant of oneself. Suppose you grew up with someone that was very harsh, or you grew up or you were raised under a very harsh religion, then the superego itself could become tyrannical even after you have withdrawn from that person that was very harsh or from that religion that is very harsh, in that you end up being a tyrant of your own self, traumatizing yourself by this superego, where you are not able to do anything because the superego will judge you as being bad. So now in Christian cycle, for instance, or in most religious cycle, the superego has been seen as what? As the voice of God. I would venture to differ from that point, that the conscience of man is not necessarily the voice of God.
Yes, because it's absolutely two different entities, so to speak. You're speaking of the mortal being and you are speaking about the voice of the immortal and being. Perhaps infallible.
Infallible, exactly. And the superego does err. It's not always right because it can produce very tyrannical effects on a person, where a person would shrink to live up to their potential because they are terrorized by their superego. They are terrorized by ritualistic religion, for instance, which is why it's very important that one's superego is trained, because if it is trained, then it can provide guidance as to how one should live, because I think is what gives us an element of obedience as people.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from what you just said, I'm still using Freud's psyche.
Yes.
So we have the unconscious, which we could liken to the id, and then we have the preconscious, which we could liken to the ego.
Yes.
And then we have the conscious.
Preconscious. Is
the unconscious,
yes,
which is the id.
Yeah.
The ego,
yes,
which is the preconscious.
Yes.
And then we have the superego, which is the conscious.
Exactly.
All right, perfect. So we totally get that.
Yeah, okay, so let's just clear things up.
Yeah.
So there's a conscience, which is the ability to discern right and wrong.
Yes.
And there's conscious, which is awareness. So now, what is responsible for your awareness? It's also responsible for you judging what is right and wrong. And that is the ego, which we call the conscience.
So it's the conscious and the conscience.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And in Freud's psyche, we had the conscious.
Yes.
The conscious.
Consciousness, awareness.
Which is awareness.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is not consciousness.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how Freud has come up with this analysis.
Okay.
So I think in the first episode, though, we were sort of interchanging between we were perceiving at least the pre-conscious as what in the language that Freud used as the super ego. We interposes between the unconscious and the conscious.
Yes.
Yeah. But now it is the ego actually that interposes between the two. I think we just have to clear on that one.
Yes, which is the super ego. So the pre-conscious is the ego in parallels. We're drawing parallels.
Exactly.
We have the pre-conscious, which in another parallel is the ego.
Yes.
And then it interposes between the unconscious.
Yes, and the conscious. Exactly.
Which in parallel it interposes between the id and the super ego.
Yes, clearly. Perfect.
All right.
Yeah. So that was Freud's analysis of the psyche in an attempt to understand what really happens in the man's mind. And I think, well, I really look at their venture, or at least at their pursuit to understand the human mind with credibility. I really give them credit for that, despite the fact of what direction they took. But I think as human beings, we really have to ask ourselves, what are we? And I think there is sufficient knowledge and wisdom that is deposited for one to understand who they are. Because I think the ultimate goal is that how do I conduct myself in this world?
Yes.
And how do I make sure that the being thrives and that those around me are also thriving? Because I think that is the most noble pursuit, that if one would then strive as an individual, and in their thriving, those around him thrive also, would be good. And I think one can achieve that if they acquaint themselves with who they are. Hence we are doing this series, Know Thyself, because I think it is with the knowledge of self, with the proper knowledge of self, that one can be able to thrive and live a meaningful and a purposeful life, so as to speak.
Absolutely. And I believe basically what you just said, it's about a person understanding or being aware of the effect they have around the people, or rather, first of all, being aware of themselves as an individual, and also being aware of the influence and the impact they have to those around them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very important that we should live that way, because man is not an island, and he does not thrive as an island. He lives in the midst of other people. And what is important, again, what I've just thought about during the course of the week, was that, there is this idea where people say, well, I don't live for people. Have you heard of such kind of thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
More often than I'd care to mention.
Yeah. So people say, well, I don't live for people. I don't care. That's one of the sub-statements that you hear from people. I think that is somehow like throwing a towel.
But is it? Because now, isn't it a form of self-empowerment? Don't people come to a point where they're like, why do people usually come to that?
Yes.
For them to come back to say that I don't live for people. Is it rebellion? Is it self-empowerment? What is it?
It's an attempt of self-empowerment in the wrong premises, so as to speak, maybe. Yeah, I say that because it's impossible not to live for people.
How so?
Because what you perceive as you is an aggregation of the perception you have of is the thoughts that you have of how you think you are perceived by other people. Let me just say that again. So you as an individual, right? You have this idea of who you are.
Yes.
Now that idea is shaped by what you think you are perceived, of how you think you are perceived. So if I think this person sees me that way, I take that and collectively with all the people that I spend time with and aggregate that. And an aggregation to that is what I would then consider to be myself. For instance, if I am talking to you, the way you respond to me, I need that feedback. We rely so much on feedback to completely say that we don't live for people, because we rely so much on feedback. The feedback that I get from you in this dialogue gives me an idea of who I am, at least, because what you tell me is a feedback that I get as to what I'm discharging. Because the thing is that I am not able to step outside of my own being and observe myself objectively. And for that reason, which means I must rely on a separate object to at least give me feedback of who I am. First of all, I've never seen myself the way you are looking at me. I've only seen reflection of myself in the mirror.
Okay, let's not go to physics, but okay, yeah, I hear you.
Exactly. So you get that how much we need that feedback.
Yes.
Which is why actually social media works. Facebook.
That's it.
It works because what do? You take a picture, you upload it there. What are you waiting for?
You're waiting for likes and comments and feedback.
And what is that like and comments?
It's feedback.
Exactly. So that it's like you are waiting there with impatient eagerness.
Yes.
What do you think of me? Why do you think you need that?
Do you think there's healthy feedback and unhealthy feedback?
There's healthy feedback and unhealthy feedback. So the sad thing about social media is that what happens when you get negative comments and you don't get likes?
I feel bad about myself.
Exactly. So now you are drawing a perception of who you are because of the negative feedback which you've got from people. So there is positive feedback and there's also negative feedback. We just have to learn where should we inquire about who we are, because we might inquire from the wrong sources, which gives us bad feedback, and then that creates a bad perception of who we are. That's creating a shield of finding out exactly who we are. Hence, know thyself is what we are trying to discover.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, you actually bring a very important, or a thought that comes to mind when you say this is it possible to take feedback that I get, but try and make it independent from the perception that I have about myself? For example, in this case, let's say I take a good case scenario, or rather the case scenario where I perceive myself to be good, but I don't get such a good feedback from that photo that I posted on Facebook. Is it possible to take that feedback, which is not positive, or rather to my perception of me being good, to make it independent from the feedback that I get from Facebook?
So you're more like saying, it does not really matter what I have received as feedback. I know who I am.
Is it possible to do
Well,
that?
then the question would be, then do you really know who you are? You see, I think
we're coming back to that question.
Exactly. So are you fit enough, that's why some people actually delete Facebook for some time and they go back again. It's actually an emotional pendulum, if you like, the Facebook social media in general, because I think it trifles with people's emotion a lot, because it's like they're capitalizing on the fact that we've got a vacuum within ourselves which cannot be filled by anything else, and we are trying to fill it with a lot of different things. Most importantly, we are lacking the knowledge of who we are, so we need social validation. That's what they call it. We rely so much on social validation. We want approval of what we do, and that's why we are more comfortable in places where people accept what we do and what we are, and that's where we become more comfortable. So we could be in a space where we are doing wrong things regardless of what the standard of right is. We could be in a place where we are doing wrong things, but we are more comfortable to do those wrong things because the people around us do what? Applause our wrong deeds.
So we feel good, and we actually seek.
Exactly.
We are more inclined to those cycles or places or spaces.
Exactly, because it gives us self-esteem.
Right.
Because self-esteem is gaining a favorable opinion about oneself. It does not matter whether what one does is right or whether what one does is good for their own being, as long as the opinion that comes, the feedback that comes to them is what they would consider as favorable, which means it does not shake them from where they are. It does not shake them from their comfort zone, so as to speak. Then that is good. Whether they are, for instance, I remember back in the days when my first year in university, I looked at the guys that were drinking and having a lot of chicks, hot chicks, we'll call them, as guys that are doing well, because this guy is liked by girls, he goes out to drink, he gets good grade, and I worked so hard to actually develop that. It did not matter whether it was a good or useful pursuit in life, but at least it would give me a favorable opinion about myself, and that's exactly what self-esteem is.
It seems like they had it all figured out, and everything was going well for them.
Exactly. It didn't matter whether they were morally sound or not, but the one thing that they were getting is that they were getting positive opinions from other people, and thus they felt good because they gained self-esteem. So self-esteem also translates in things like grades. You might base all your life and all your being, you might put all your being on the fact that you get good grades, right? What happens when you don't get good grades?
Then it's a problem.
Exactly.
I feel like I am a failure.
What happens when a girl that is told that they are beautiful and they bend out one day, their face get bent?
Their whole world turns upside down.
And that's the problem with self-esteem. That's the problem with self-esteem, because self-esteem, it relies on opinion. And opinions change.
And opinions change with time and factors that are sometimes beyond
It's more like placing your being on an unstable structure, because that is bound to change. If you base your being, or if you value your being, or if you see yourself as valuable simply because of you've got nice hair, if you value yourself simply because you get good grades at school, if you value yourself simply because you've got a nice phone or a nice car, then that's actually not a very proper way to actually esteem yourself or even value yourself, because you are sort of building on sand, to put it metaphorically.
Okay, so in other words, self-esteem is compounded or built by external feedback.
Yes.
From that is perhaps totally independent from you or from your influence, such that now you're going to perceive yourself as a certain person because of someone else's opinion of you. Or
someone else's feedback. It does not necessarily have to be someone else. It could be what you do. That I'm able to get good grades. But therefore I am a smart person. I am good. You know, you wake up so zealous. It works. It's more like a drug.
Yes.
Because for that moment it works, because you wake up, you boost about what you can do, and you are ready to face the world. But the thing is that what is propelling you is bound to change. And it is likely that if it changes, your whole world will come crumbling down. So now maybe the question would be then, how do I then deal with external feedback? How do I deal with external opinion? And how do I have a proper estimation of them? It's like, you have this idea where you are being congratulated, and you like, oh yeah, you could either say, oh yeah, I am, you see, or you could say, well, that's all right, I could do better, but they say, well, you're being humble. You see, I think we have to approach it in that manner, where whatever achievement it is that we gain, then we need to think of it as something that lacks improvement, that is capable of being improved. That way, then we don't become too saturated on the merits, on the immediate merits and immediate gratification, but we sort of look for meaning rather than immediate happiness. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, which takes me back, because we're still talking about feedback, because I thought there was good feedback. I mean, from the things that you said, for example, good grades, and the fact that I have nice hair, or someone else has beautiful skin, and then from that they gain self-esteem. I thought there was absolutely nothing wrong with certain things giving a person feedback. For example, like good grades is the work that they have individually put in. Okay, maybe not individually, but it's the work that they have put in. Unlike you wake up with beautiful hair, so what? The next person could have.
It's like
the
you've worked for, and that's exactly why people take it and put their entire value on it, because they feel that they've worked for. I don't have a problem with someone getting good grades and feeling motivated to do that. But let that really be an outburst of self-worth rather than self-esteem. So I guess then the question is, what's the difference?
Exactly.
Between self-esteem and self-worth. I think self-worth has to do with recognizing one's dignity and pursuing self-respect.
All right.
Rather than pursuing opinions about who I might be, because that is bound to change. And I cannot keep up to change according to what opinions say. That's where now it will lead me to conformity, because I see, if I do this, the people really celebrate me. Let me do it again.
Yes.
But now there is no question as to whether what I'm doing is in line with it. Does it build my dignity? Does it build my self-respect? It does not really matter. It's like I ran naked and people celebrated and they cheered me up. I remember we used to do that at rest. There was a night where guys would take off their clothes and run naked. It was called the Naked Mile, more like an American Pie kind of scene.
I saw that and I got the shock of my life on campus, and I actually ran to hurt myself.
Exactly, but the guys that did that were cool guys. So and they would continue doing that, or people would feel that they need to participate in that, because what? People cheer up. So I it's like I'm being changed by people outside there because I don't know who I am, then I am bound to modification. And that's exactly what is happening now today in the world. Unfortunately, it happens through movies, it happens through the series we like, it happens through all the influences around us. We are able to be, our personalities and our traits are malleable, in that we can make you a complete different person by just subjecting you to a particular influence, because you don't exactly know what you are. You are chasing what? You are chasing that positive comment.
Right.
You see, so people then judge, they equate positivity with right and they equate negativity with wrong. And sometimes negativity is right. Because sometimes when you're going out of the way, I need to tell you, well, you are out. That's a negative comment, but it might build you for what? To actually be able to do the right thing. So positive does not necessarily mean right. To gain a positive opinion about yourself does not necessarily mean that you are in the path of right. And to get a negative comment does not mean that you are wrong. It actually might be a foundation to compound your character on, but it came as a negative comment.
I love this. This is absolutely... I love it, and I hope you love it too, and I hope you can take a moment to actually think about it. And when we come back to an issue of self-worth, which is exactly what you're talking about, you're talking about very two important aspects of dignity and self-respect. But I cannot ignore, or rather, when I think of dignity and self-respect, then I see that it is not in any way dependent on the feedback, right? To a certain degree, it also has reference.
It does have reference.
It has, from my thinking, it has moral reference. And let me just put moral reference, from which it can be influenced by so many things. Moral reference, it could be influenced by culture, it could be influenced by religion, it could be influenced by your social cycle, or rather what you aspire to be, the absolute inspiration of one's...
Exactly. I think people that... how do I put this? I think a person that respects themselves, because let's just give it as an example, because these are serious obstructions which many of us might even struggle to actually think of them as to how they actually transcend to the physical realm, at least, because these are abstract. But I think example would be best. A person that respects themselves would think of themselves as a loaded gun that is bound to be triggered at any time. So it goes back to what we were talking about, being aware that there is something about me that's wrong. I think it's an existential starting point.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah,
I have a potential.
Yeah, I have a potential for that. Remember, we were talking about in episode two, we talked about one seeking for goodness, but then not being able to confront the evil that they have.
Yes.
So now when you confront that evil and you are aware of what you are capable of, and you know, that comes with self-respect. You think of yourself more like a beast. Like, I'm dangerous. You see?
A respectable beast.
A respectable beast. So it's like you have a gun that's loaded, but you don't have to shoot.
All right. So is that whole aspect of, I'm in power.
Yeah.
I'm in control, and I'm in control of the situation.
Exactly.
And I can flip it anyhow.
But I would rather choose to flip it for good.
But I choose, and I make a very, very conscious choice.
Exactly.
To flip it for good.
For good. Although I know that I have this potential.
And if I'm going to manage that potential.
Yes, exactly. If I manage it and manipulate it for good, then that's okay. It's like I know I can shoot, but I will not. I think that has to do with self-respect. So one person that does not have self-respect, and most of us, including
at some point or another,
we do lack self-respect because we want an applause.
Yes.
We want people to cheer up.
Yeah.
So we're not talking as perfectionists here or perfect people. We do have that time where we are more likely to be swayed in doing things which will give us a favorable opinion about ourselves and deny the things which will build our dignity and give us self-respect.
So maybe which is why we're actually so interested in this.
Exactly.
How do we manage the beast?
We want to be better people.
Yeah.
We want to be better people. So I think it translates with to so many things. For instance, I see a lot of people, right? They demand self-respect, but I'm like, your deeds do not prove that you have that. You don't. It's like There's a saying that says, how do you expect me to respect you when you don't respect yourself?
I think you just said it all. I don't know what to say more to that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it has anything to do with logic. To me, sometimes when I am the other person observing, I just don't see any logic in that.
Exactly. So it's like, how do you expect me to respect you when you don't respect yourself? It's also an element of you are not aware of what you are doing, right? And what you're doing does reflect this lack of respect for your own self, but yet you are screaming, I must be respected. And you notice that people that actually have respect for themselves, or people that have recognized their self-worth, they don't scream, respect me.
No.
They don't. But now as an individual then, here you are walking around, you see an old man, he's drunk, and then he's peeing his pants. He's doing the things which are not respectable. So the question is that, do you respect such person?
It's my choice, but should that person expect respect from me if in the awareness of them doing what they're doing?
Exactly. So I think then it goes with how one think they should, if you are wise enough then, simply because someone is blind to their own flaws, it doesn't mean that you that are aware of their flaws have to then expose them or deny them your respect. Because if you deny them respect, you are not a respectful person. So it's like they are changing you to be what they are. Their environment causes you to disrespect them.
I feel like there are two things.
Yeah.
We're talking about a person who demands respect.
Yes.
Yet do they do things that...
Respectables.
Are they doing something that makes them respectable?
Exactly.
And so then you're talking about the other person now.
Yeah,
saying,
you as an individual. Okay, let's just draw the scenario again. There you are. You see a person that is doing things which are not respectable.
Yes.
Do you give them respect?
Okay. Personally,
baby.
Personally, I will say that I think it's within what realm.
Okay, we give an example of a
okay,
man. If an uncle is drunk, he's peeing his pants, he's saying all these nonsensical things in the street.
Yes.
You are with your friends.
Yes.
You respect him.
In that scenario, I will choose to respect them.
Okay.
But I feel that if I am, how shall I put it? If it is my close friend, then we might need to have a talk.
Exactly. But also, so you would grant the respect, given the fact that you be able to at least tell them why you respected them, or what they could do to make you respect them easier in another way. It's like, okay, because for me, personally.
Yeah. What would you do? What do you feel? Like, would you respect someone in that situation, or do you feel, because it's one thing to pass a person on the street and say that and give them their space and their due respect, and it's another thing to be emotionally invested in a situation, be it in family, relations, friends that you care about that are close, and they do something that is disrespectful to them even, and in the process perhaps disrespecting you, because this somehow
there's relation.
There's relation.
Yeah, so if it's someone I think someone that you are related to, it's quite difficult to just, if it's a stranger, you could just say, well, it's their own business, whatever.
Yeah.
Like we meet a lot of people in the street doing a disrespectful thing, we just pass.
Yes.
But if it's with a close friend or with a family or with a spouse, then it's difficult to just throw your hand and say whatever. Then I think what you then have to do, because you have to be careful that you are not influenced to be like them in another way.
Yes.
Because that's their aura. Their aura is disrespect.
Wow.
And when they come to you, they evoke that disrespect. And if you disrespect them, then they've won you. They have a power to influence you. It's like someone comes and swears at you and do that, and you say, okay, I will tell them to, oh no, you are stepping outside of your realm to be like them. And
in any case, I think also a person can do so much to respect someone who's disrespecting themselves.
Exactly.
There's a certain time when they're going to give. Be like, you swear and you disrespect yourself and you do all these things that are not cool.
Yeah.
Then I can put up with so much.
Exactly. And wisdom actually would require us to actually put up until to that level where we are able to talk to them. Because what happens is that you want to impart your respect. Suppose you are the respectful one, that has respect for self, and also you for respect for others, to be like them. So what you do is that you give them respect. Of course, because it's strange to them, they will be repulsive at the first time. But if you insist, then they wonder, then how come this person is not affected by my disrespect? I wonder what it is. Then maybe in that way they are able to see respect. But it's not everyone that's like that. Some people are just completely blinded to anything other than what they know. They're so much in love with what they know, even if so much in love with what they are then, and they don't want to be changed. So you then have to distance yourself from that kind of person, especially if they are family. Or
I guess you just sort of answered my question, but I wanted to ask it before you actually answered it, because I was about to say, the awareness that a person might have to say, I have disrespected myself so much, and to a certain extent, and to levels that are unspeakable, and then I demand respect from the other person still, because in any ways they still would, and then the other person gives respect until a certain point where they realize that, why is it that they're not changing to the disrespectful person that I am? It's one thing. I think when you're dealing with someone,
it's a realization, exactly.
Yes, but I think it's when you deal with, it's two different people. There's someone who will have that awareness and someone else might not.
And that's where exactly that, do not give what is holy to dogs, because they might turn and attack you. Do not exactly what it means. If you continue to act out a respectable principle, because it's best taught when it's acted out than when it is spoken. If you act out that respectable principle and they can see it, and you are aware that they can see it, and they still don't change, they decide to become who they are, then that's when now you have to distance yourself, not cast your pearls upon swine, because that's exactly what it means. Because if you continue to do that, they devalue that virtue which you have.
That is true. And I don't know if it happens in most, whether it's parallel with different situations where what you said, where they come to realize that, why is it that this person doesn't turn out to be this disrespectful and this disrespectful, and come down to my level of no value, no dignity whatsoever.
Yes, exactly.
Then it comes where it's like, I hate you then.
I hate you because
I hate you in so many words. Not so many words, like I hate you. Why don't you tend to be like me? And be this swine and be disrespectful.
And that's exactly what it means, that when you don't react according to what people expect, they punish you. And that is the punishment that you will get. The punishment of standing firm to the principle which you know and believe to be right. And if you are not willing to compromise, people will punish you for that. They will either punish you by, if you are dependent upon them for something else, they will withdraw. And if you are their friend, they will leave. They will, either you join, if you can't beat them, they say join them, right? Or reject them and hate them. That's exactly what happens. So if that's how the carnal nature is, actually. If we cannot associate with something, if something is not in line with our pre-existing behaviors and beliefs, we shun that thing. We hate it, particularly if that thing represents the ideal. Suppose you are a woman at 30, right? And you want to be, at that time you'd imagine yourself to be driving, having a family and all these kind of things. And then you meet someone that's living that ideal life. You cannot like them at first, unless you're willing to at least learn. And that's one thing that if you're aware of, because when you meet your ideal, it's like you meet your perfect person, and it's not you, it's the next person. Then you want what they have, and you cannot get it. So what is the solution? Hate. And that's where hate comes from. That's why people talk about haters.
So are you talking about envy?
Exactly. Hate and envy, because I think as humans we have not learned very well to deal with jealousy. And more, particularly if it's the ideal. I mean, it's not like you are jealous of everything that you see. You are jealous of the things that you want to be, or the things that you want for yourself, right? Or the things which you thought that maybe at that time in your life you would have acquired them. When you see then someone at your age that has acquired everything that you want in life, then you're more likely to envy and to push away or to criticize. That's another best way to do it. so that you can at least rationalize the fact that why you don't have it. And then you speak about, first say for instance, well, I don't have a car, then I see some people my age already driving, I'll then speak against buying cars. Like, no, I don't think it's best that one should buy a car at this age, because a car is not an investment. Oh, but the fact is that you don't have a car, and if you had the money, would you buy it or would you not? So for me, it has become a lesson. I respect people with money.
Is there a thin line between envy and being inspired?
Yeah, I think there is a thin line, and one has to know the difference.
Because what you're saying now is like, rationally in my mind, I think, why am I not inspired by that? Why wouldn't someone who meets someone who has what they wish they had? Why aren't they inspired? Why is it?
I think inspiration is when if it's someone that is far from you and that you're not related to in any way, and you really don't care what they have for breakfast. But when it's someone close that lives with you, it's like a perpetual reminder that you have not got what you want, which is why people are not very clear about what they want in life, because it becomes clear that they're not getting them. You see, so it's a very tricky thing. One has to draw parallel, like you say, between being inspired and being envious. And some people, at first, they would like to pretend to be inspired. But the fact of the matter is that they cannot deal with that person right there and there, every day of their life, waking up to that perpetual reminder that, hey, you are not there. I mean, that's torturous. I mean, why wouldn't you hate that? I mean, like, it's really torturous. But we have to be wise, and which is why, you see, I think the solution then is when they talk about being content with oneself. It's not an easy thing to acquire, and people throw this word around as though you can just be content with what you have.
Or go to the supermarket and be like, I have come to buy contentment.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that easy. It comes with a full recognition of what you are, who you are, what you want in life. Because you are unique. You have a unique purpose. When you know your purpose and direction, you will not be bothered even if someone would reach the mountain, as long as they are not going through your path. And it has been made so that each one's purpose is different for that reason.
It's interesting you brought the word purpose, because what comes to mind when you say this is, wouldn't someone then be absolutely content to a reasonable degree where they feel that they are living up to their purpose?
Exactly. That's the ultimate source of joy. Joy is the source of happiness. That's why one should not pursue happiness in life. Happiness is shallow, because happiness is an expectation of gain. You thinking of you getting paid tomorrow, you get happy. When the salary comes, the next day you are sad. But are you living your purpose in brokenness? Are you fulfilling your purpose in brokenness? You are joyous, and joy is the source of happiness. So happiness should be an outburst of living a purposeful life or a meaningful life. You see, so and it helps in many ways. Because if you are purposeful, if you are living up to your purpose, there is no need to look at someone's things and think that you are not there. What do you mean you are not there? Are you going to the same destination? Definitely not. And when that happens, you realize that you are inspired by very few people and very few things.
Whoa, okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay, maybe let's revert back. Should we go back maybe to Sigmund Freud?
I think one thing that I'd like us to go back to is because I feel that contentment goes very well with self-worth. Because when someone feels purposeful, when they feel that their purpose has been achieved, and it's easier then to feel content. And within that realm is where one does not entirely depend on the external feedback that they get, which is where now they are not heavily or entirely relying on self-esteem, where they are rather looking at self-respect and dignity, which is self-worth.
That's exactly, you put it precisely well. Because as much as feedback is important, but feedback is not the determining factor of what you are and who you are and whether you are progressive in life. Because it can be distorted, excuse me. It can be distorted. It's an opinion. It can be true, it can be false. But if you are fully grounded, if you know what you are doing, you are sure that this is what you've been designated to do, then people say, wow, you're doing well. You're really doing well. Like, oh, wow, I really didn't think that I didn't really think that this is worth an applause. Because that was not the idea.
I see, but you're so fully engulfed in what you're doing and the purpose which you are fulfilling.
Yes.
Far beyond
an applause.
And if an applause comes,
like,
well and good. Thank you.
Thank you.
But whether you applaud me today or not, I'm going to continue doing what I do.
It does not change my course of life. And you see, what I'm doing, it's not that I can show them. It's that it brings me fulfillment. When I'm in it because I love it. Even if I had to do it at the back of Table Mountain alone when there's no one watching.
Please watch.
Even if I have to do it behind Table Mountain when there was no one watching, I will still do it. And if someone heard that I was behind Table Mountain fulfilling my purpose, and they give me a pat in the back, because that's difficult to get in this world. For someone to come and give you a pat in the back and say, well, you're doing well, that's difficult to get in this world. So we should not really rely on that. When it comes, it's good.
And we should appreciate it. Actually, I do, very much. I have a lot of gratitude for that.
Yeah, exactly. We should have the gratitude for that. But if I start something entirely because I want a pat,
then it's
self-esteem. Well, if I don't do this, then the people won't applaud. Which is why social media plays an important role in actually building people's esteem and destroying their self-worth at the same time.
Randani, when we look at two different individuals, because we have realized from, I believe, episode 3, that there are certain, because we perceive the world differently to a certain degree.
Yes.
We're all human, but then we have our individual perception. So when it comes to self-worth, which is largely encompassed by self-respect and dignity, is it possible then that your self-worth is different from mine? Or is there an underlying factor in humanity to say this is actually respectable and this would give one, this is dignified and this is respectable? Or shall I extend on a mountain and say, no, this is not dignified for me, this is not respectable, therefore I'll just walk in the street naked?
So are you saying, is there a common ground for self-worth? Is there something that all of us should feel that we are worth because of that underlying factor? I think the underlying factor, especially that shapes the Western idea, that's shaped most of Western ideology, is that the individual is of worth because each individual has the divine spark. That's what they would say, that the individual is not to be just tossed up and about as a useless object. The individual is important, and that's why we have idea of rights. Rights came as a result to say that each individual deserves an autonomous space in which they will act out their responsibility. Unfortunately, now we're emphasizing on their space rather than what they should do within their space, because the right, that's exactly what a right is. The right is to say, we are giving you an autonomous space where you can discharge your responsibility. But now we are emphasizing more on creating space. Create a space for me and do what? You see, we are not emphasizing that, which is the responsibility that comes with the rights. So I think with that, one has to know at least that they are not just a product of some cytoplasm that was washed up on the beach. And I think that's where they can start. And I think that's where, I'm going to sound like I'm attacking evolution because I'm Christian, but I think evolutionary basis of the origin of human beings continues to devalue and strips humans of their value. Because I am not something that was fashioned by a loving creator. I am just a product of some evolutionary process that took time. Over time, some soup, there was an explosion, there came a soup, and from that soup came a bacteria, which became a fish, and a fish to a monkey, whatever. And there I was. What is the meaning then of life with that basis? What am I worth then? You see? So I think it's also some of the scientific philosophies that has led people to not have proper value for themselves. So now I think the individual then has to decide, where am I going to put my value upon? What is the fundamental base for my value? How am I going to say I'm valued because of what?
Say we have two people who entirely believe that they are have a purposeful. They were
created with a purpose.
Yes, they were created with a purpose. Their existence is very purposeful from their creation. Shall we say then that these two people have a generally common basis for their self-respect and dignity?
Well, you see, the tricky thing is that it's not so much about just knowing. Well, how many people think they are created and they don't really feel their self-worth? They seek their self-worth in other things.
It's basically
a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of Christians are living useless lives, so to speak. They are without purpose, without worth, and they are seeking to augment their lives with objects and certain things which will give them a self-esteem. In fact, there's hardly a mention today in Christian churches about self-worth, but there's an overemphasis of self-esteem.
Ranani, tell me, do we have tragedy, or rather, how do we? Because when you speak of self-esteem, what comes to mind is what other people. I mean, we when in the process of trying to fulfill our purposes, then we have careers, we have things that we do, and then sometimes you might be a teacher, teach children, you might write books, you expect people to read them and give you feedback, and so how do you deal with that? And then you also have, let's say, for example, like when you speak of social media, we go straight to TV. Someone is
well known
into entertainment, and that in itself determines whether they are good or not. And they entirely base the entirety of their purpose on feedback.
On feedback that they are known.
Do we foresee challenges that would otherwise avoid if someone was not in that line of work?
Yeah, there are a lot, because you must understand what it means. You see, the problem is that there is a desire for fallen nature. I'm using fallen nature because also it exists in existentialist, that in fact, in most philosophies, we all agree that somehow we are not as we are supposed to be. Whether we may call that fallen, as the Christians do, or we may call that thrownness, as the existentialists do, but somehow there is something that we are not in control of, and there's something flawed. So now, in that nature, we've got two great desires. The desire to be known and the desire to know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You see, to be known is one of the greatest desire in man. And worth to be known for what I know. I think that's part of the reason why we're doing this.
I see. Okay, I see. All right.
Yeah.
To be known for what I know, that is.
Yeah, I think that's why we are doing this in the first place. So that at least we may be known for what we know, because it has an element of fulfillment in it.
Yes.
But will we do it only if there were 5 people that we're going to know what we know?
Yes, because it has an element of fulfilling purpose.
Exactly. So fulfillment in purpose does not necessarily depend on how many people validate. Would you still write a book if you're only writing for 2 audiences?
Yes.
And that's exactly what it should be. That's the difference. Because one should not be driven by the fact that I will then get too many applause if I do this. And unfortunately, that's how we orientate our life. Our life is orientated based on what kind of outcomes would I bring forth then. And if I don't bring forth the expected outcome, then I might even think of what I'm doing as shallow and as something that I should not continue doing. For instance, and we become blinded to the idea of growth, because you start somewhere and then you grow. You might write a book and only 2 people read it. But somewhere after 100 years, someone might pick it up and maybe read it in front of a big audience, and your book might be read. So it's not immediate, instant gratification, so as to speak. Fulfilling purpose does not have instant gratification attached to it. But the problem with self-esteem is that it needs that. It needs that because it thrives on the applause, it thrives on the gratification, it thrives on the opinions that you receive. As long as the opinions are favorable, it does not matter whether the direction that the individual has taken is fulfilling.
I feel what we're talking about today is very important, because it determines a lot about living a fulfilled life.
Yeah.
Would you say that it's possible that one could train themselves, maybe unaware, that they let their selves be defined a lot on the basis of self-esteem. That someone can expose themselves so much to just what validates self-esteem, such that that is all that defines them. That they don't go to a point where they learn about dignity and self-respect.
Unfortunately, that's where most of us are. And the problem is that we confuse that also with self-worth, you see. And which is why then you would wonder what fulfillment is there, for instance, in saying that, for instance, say, girl, you've got really nice curves. You should show them off, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then you show them off. When you walk in the street, those guys go like, "Woo, wow!" Exactly. What is that? That is a favorable feedback, and it makes you gain a favorable
self-esteem.
It makes you gain a favorable opinion about yourself.
So it raises my self-esteem. It strengthens my self-esteem.
Then what are you going to focus on then?
Curves.
Curves and other things. Then you might say, wow, also my boobs actually do this. Then you are going to look at the clothing which are going to reveal that.
Yeah.
For instance, then now you show off your boobs and someone says, oh wow. You see? And unfortunately, the world has been set up in that manner.
Okay. Is it like still coming back to the issue of self-worth and self-esteem? You know, I'm thinking, is it possible for one to be in the realm of so much self-esteem where they feed their self-esteem so much that I know we're not talking about psychology here, but I think this is quite interesting. Is it possible for someone to just feed on self-esteem?
Yeah, it is possible.
And maybe not even be aware or not even consider self-worth, such that, for example, if someone comes and we gauge their joyfulness or happiness is just about getting opinion, whether it's respectable, whether it's not, that's not where the point is. But then the entirety of themselves is based on the feedback that they get from
exactly that's
from
where,
outside.
Yeah, that's where most people are living by. It's every day I must live by applause. I must live by an opinion of how I must live by a favorable opinion, which is why such kind of people becomes very sensitive to criticism and negative statements. You can't say that about me, because their entire being is dependent on what? Is dependent on positive opinions all the time, and it's not possible. I mean, you will err. You're a human being. You need direction. Someone need to come and sober you up, you know, to say, hey, that does not look good on you, you know, or that is not really in line with what you are trying to pursue in life. What do they say? Don't be so negative. But negativity does not imply wrong. You know, and you know, self-esteem, self-worth, actually it's a psychological thing. It's a psychological factor because it has to do with the mental process and how the being orientates itself. So unfortunately, like you're saying, people are thriving on that, which is why, so they get fed up of the popular opinions, right, from the people around them, and they say, well, I want to be different. I want to live for me. And we come back to that statement.
Yes.
Yeah, actually that's the soul fed up. That's the person being fed up of do this, be that, you know. It's like, I want to, and I think also at the same time is a longing to actually find a, like, out of all these things that I have done, I've done nothing which came from within. For example, I've done nothing which I thought myself, I've always worn this because of people like them, and that's the kind of the celebrity life. It's a miserable life, I'll tell you. I'm not a celebrity, but you can really tell that these people are miserable because it's a particular party. You have to dress like this because this is how people now are thinking of you. This is how people see you now. This is what you should do. And then one comes to a point where they're fed up. They're like, I want to do me, but who is me? The me is so far lost that for them to find is going to be very difficult. They are more likely going to take a different route, which is going to lead them in a far more lost state. For instance, someone then would decide to say, you know what? I'm going to wear black and paint my hair blue and have dark eyelashes and whatever. That would make me different. At least when I walk in the street, people will look at me strangely. That would prove me to be unique. But what is happening is that you don't really want to be unique, but you think you're being unique. What is going on is that you don't want to be unique to the majority, but you want to be the same with the people that accept you.
Before we get to the blue eyelashes, I think you just described life, a tragedy in life.
Yeah.
You just described a life that is tragedy. Do you think it's possible that what role do parents have in this?
Yeah, especially for the little girls
and the little boys.
Yes, and the little boys. I mean, with boys are not really good at discharging their emotion. I think what corrodes most boys is when they are a little bit older. Yeah, but they are affected. But I think mostly for girls, because they have the nurturing trait, and that makes them very high in emotion. They are more responsive to emotions. And the other thing is that one interesting fact, which might be a tangent to what we're saying, is that women are more likely to see when someone is lying quicker than a man. But they just, to be polite, they just choose to ignore it. So that's because of their high in emotion. So parenting takes a very important role in this, because how a child is raised will determine how the child will behave later on in life. And some children that I see walking in the streets, some young girls, say for instance in matric or at the university, the way they behave, you can just say, oh wow, that was the result of poor parenting. But at the same time, it does not make them free from the choices which they make, because as much as they grew up in a very bad environment, they still have a choice to make.
So in other words, you'd say that parents have a very important role in helping children be conscious of self-respect and self-esteem and self-respect and dignity, which is self-worth. And also help children to navigate around self-esteem, because it's not something we can absolutely discard and take off, but then we need to find out what is more important.
Exactly. So do you want to live a life where you depend on positive, favorable opinions about you, or do you want to be at least in a place where you have people that might cause hurt for a short period, but then delight in a long run? Because if you are focused on self-esteem, you'll get a delight for a moment, but a hurt in a long run. If you live around people that are critical, that really love you, they will tell you when you go wrong, and that will not boost your self-esteem. But in the long run, it will boost your self-worth. We could say that woman really knows who she is. Wow. I think that's the kind of woman that men are looking for.
And men that women are looking for, believe you me.
I guess then it's a fair game.
It's a fair game. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the conversation. Is it important to know the difference between self-worth and self-esteem? I think it determines and it charts the entire road that one gets to walk. And most importantly, to come to a question that we are wondering about, to say, know thyself. How do we actually get to a point where we know ourselves? Because it looks like self-esteem blocks us with the constant of receiving feedback, to an extent that we are not able to critically look at what is respectable and dignified, but rather we are more sensitive to the negative feedback, which should actually be the one which we take to enhance ourselves and be a better person tomorrow. So I hope that we can work on our dignity and self-respect, and let's put more value even for future generations for what is most important, which is self-worth. Have a good one.
Thank you.